when I used to be, was the past president of the City of Eugene Human Rights Commission. And he brought a dream to the commission about 2-3 years ago, Ken? 3 years ago. That said, how about if Eugene became a human rights city? What would that look like? And said, can you dream with me? Can you see it happening? That all our collective knowledge, everything that we do that touches us, we see it through the lens of human rights. And as we saw today, human rights is not only civil rights. It's the rights of all. It's political rights, it's economical rights. Rights for immigrants and rights for all of us. So if we had that dream, what would that look like? And we did not throw this party for all of you today without what's going to happen next. And without the ability of us asking you all to work. So to tell you what's going to happen next, I would like to introduce, and please, big applause for somebody that brought us the dream, brought us the possibility of thinking big, Ken Neubeck.
Thank you very much, Carmen. Hasn't this been an evening? This has really been a super thing, and I think beyond the expectations of people that thought it up about 6 weeks ago that we really need to do something like this. So I'd really like to hear some applause for the organizers, the speakers, the performers, for Mayor Kitty Piercy and her proclamation, and for yourselves for being here and being part of this community. I was asked to speak for only a few minutes because it's the end of the evening and we still have another performer that we want to hear from who will usher us out to do human rights work. But what I wanted to say is just a couple of things. One is that this is not just simply an event, but it's the beginning, the start of a process. A process that actually sort of began a year or so ago when we had a symposium over at the university and a community workshop to address the whole question of the concept of human rights and how you can apply human rights locally. And so we're ratcheting that up, and this evening provided a wonderful opportunity for us to do that. This was really a grassroots effort, and I think for those of you who were involved in it, and those of you who observed the outcome of it, it really does show what we can do here in the city of Eugene with the energy and the imagination, the passion, and the goodwill, and the good values that people in this community have. And all those are the kinds of things that we're going to put into moving toward progressively becoming a human rights city in Eugene. I think as a community, we really need to support and recognize the fine work that's being done by the Human Rights Commission. It's the Human Rights Commission. The Human Rights Commission has taken on the task of exploring what does it mean, what are the possibilities for the city of Eugene becoming a human rights city. Its focus is essentially on city government. What can city government do? How can it change? How can it reframe its thinking about human rights in terms of its everyday operations? And that's a process that's going to continue to go on. But as a community, we need to think beyond the government. We also need to think about our own activities, whether we're in social justice organizations or social service organizations, or major community institutions like education, or the hospitals, or the transportation system, or the utilities. There's opportunities there for human rights to be implemented. And we need to think more broadly, because in order to become a human rights city, it can't just be the city government that changes its practices. Everyone has to get involved in this, because ultimately what I think is going to happen is a shift in community culture. When I was outside earlier, a reporter asked me, well, where did I see Eugene in 60 years? What did I think Eugene was going to look like if it was a human rights city 60 years from now? And I said, well, we probably wouldn't even be using the terms human rights. We would be so engulfed in the practice and in living human rights that it would be like a fish in water. The fish don't really notice the water that they're in. I'm making some big assumptions about fish, but I don't know that the fish really know that they're in the water. They're just there. And I don't really like to see the human rights culture be like that we live in accordance with human rights. We we have the values of human rights, we engage in the practices that are guided by human rights, without having to consciously even think about it. And that's where I'd like to see us going in the long run. As Mayor Pearson pointed out, human rights are the necessary foundation for a sustainable Eugene. We do a lot of siloing in this town, not just in this town, but everybody does siloing, where we may consider ourselves people working on immigration rights, or LGBTQ rights, or disability rights, or racism, or whatever. One of the things that the human rights framework does is that it allows us to break down these silos and to see across all these issues in terms of what we have in common and how we can begin to work together and support one another on what we're doing. And that's exactly what's happened here in this room. When you walk around those tables and you look at those posters that people made, each and every person, each and every group is expressing its own issues in terms of fundamental human rights. And in a sense, that square, it's not really a circle, that square of tables represents a unity that can take place in the community, where the different issues don't divide us in terms of identity politics or something like that. But the different issues are just differences that we know that we have while we all commonly work in the direction of human rights. Veiling thing. I mean, there's nothing that's going to win out. It's not either human rights or sustainability. It is all tied together, and we really all need to work on that. One of the things that we've been talking about, numbers of people have been involved in planning this. There's some 30 organizations that have signed on as co-sponsors, and I think someone mentioned there's 25 tables out there. Is the next step. How are we going to envision what a human rights city looks like? The Human Rights Commission has been working on this, but pretty much with regard to some ideas about where city government might go. But as I said earlier, we need to be thinking about ourselves. How can we change and examine the missions of our own social justice organizations that we're involved in, the social service agencies that we're involved in, and so forth. So we're going to call a Human Rights Summit in the spring. We want to bring people together again, not to celebrate as we have tonight, but rather to sit down and talk about what's the common vision of what we would like our city to look like. And what sorts of strategies do we think, coming from all different directions, what sorts of strategies do we think it's going to take in order to do that? And then, of course, the next step, it always involves work. We need to figure out how we're going to implement and work with these strategies. And we're all going to do it together. So I send you forth with a song. We have someone who's going to come up. Joan Bayless from Temple Beth Israel is going to lead us in a song that I hope will lift our wings so that we can fly out of here. But not fly out of here just as we'll land any old place. We're going to fly out of here and do human rights work. Okay? That's where we're going when we fly out of here. So Joan, if you would please come up and take the microphone. And I thank you.